leftovers, or the DMV,
Number 97.
or house cleaning, or Chumba Casino always brings the fun. Play over 100 different games online for free from anywhere. You could redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. Live the Chumba life. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
I'm Amber Ruffin.
And I'm her gorgeous sister, Lacey Lamar.
Okay, fun fact, Lacey is not that gorgeous.
Amber, get on with it.
Okay, everybody, we have exciting news to share. We're teaming up with Will Ferrell's Big Money Players Network to bring you our brand new podcast called The Amber and Lacey and Amber Show.
We did it. We sold a bunch of books, we conquered late night, and now we'll play fun quizzes and games with friends and take you along for the ride. Listen to The Amber and Lacey and Amber Show on Will Ferrell's Big Money Players Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is the Jabberjaw Podcast Network.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less. It's Ray Harkins, your host, ever present, hanging out here on the internet, talking to you about independent music. Actually not talking to you, talking to another person who's involved with this beautiful music scene that we call home. And hopefully getting some interesting nuggets and insights and where they're coming from, you know, because all of us come from somewhere, right? So, yeah, well, first of all, let's get some feedback on the bonus episode that I posted. I got a lot of people either texting or emailing me in regards to the bonus episode. They really appreciated my contributions to that conversation, but were also, maybe a little disappointed at the way that the questions were posed to me. And, I'll kind of wrap it up like this. The Bad Christian guys, like, they're friends of mine, and I know what they're coming from a good place. And they're coming from the place of, trying to come at these issues with a not a fresh take, but basically, being ignorant to this stuff. And so that's kind of what they were doing. And, they were asking maybe, some silly and or provocative questions. But, that's kind of the tenor of the show. But, I just wanted to put that out there. That, I wasn't bothered by any of the questions. Some people were concerned, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they were asking this. But it was totally fine. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about, that's fine. Dive back to the last episode, the bonus episode. But anyways, that's that. But you didn't come here for this. You came here for the guest this week, who is Mike Herrera. And he plays in the band MXPX. He also hosts his own podcast called the Mike Herrera Hour. And he's also part of the Jabberjaw Media Network. And he's existed in my ecosystem for quite some time. But I was like, you know what? Let's pull him down, get him on the show, talk to him. Because, I have these very distinct memories of people that worked with them at the time in which they were, absolutely exploding. And kind of the conflict that I personally saw within their growth. And then obviously them being a religious band, a Christian band. And then all of the kind of, frankly, trappings that they felt in regards to that. So I had to put him on the spot, and he was great with that. So thank you very much, Mike. And what else do I got to tell you? I got to tell you about noecho.net, right? How about that website? Hopefully you're visiting it on a regular basis now. I love that site. I love what they do. Great. I particularly I want to focus on this, their photography spotlight. And because I think a lot of people, and frankly, I've done this where I've had maybe, 2 or 3 different photographers on this show, but people that, capture these images that are frankly so important within the context of independent music. And now in these day and ages of social media, where it's like, Instagram, you can become extremely well known as a photographer. But anyways, I just love their photographer spotlight because it, shows the people that are capturing these images in, a new light or a light at all, because a lot of the times people have no idea who these people are behind the lens. So I just love that. But go visit noecho.net. Great partners of ours. I love what they do. And that's that. What else I got to tell you? Oh, yeah. Before, usually I announce this at the very tail end of the show in the outro, but next week's episode is different. It's actually one of the Buried Treasures episodes that, for those of you that listen to a very regular basis, I've done 1 or 2 of these shows in the past. But next week, frankly, it was such a rad conversation that I had with my friend Joey that I'm planning on releasing it as a full-fledged, like, non-bonus episode. Not like it makes any real difference that I'm calling it a bonus episode, but anyways, that's what you're getting next week. It won't be the traditional, one-on-one interview sort of stuff. So, yeah, I think that's all I got for you. But now here's Mr. Mike Herrera, us just chopping it up, hanging out over Skype. It was very fun. So here's Mike, and I will talk to you after the show. Oh, wait. Ha! How about me forgetting something, right? So I play in a band. I play in a band called Taken, and we have just announced some shows in December. We're playing up in Canada. We're playing on December 8th in Toronto, and then we're also playing on December 10th in Montreal, and I can't wait for those. So if you are up in that area, you should come hang out. It'll be a lot of fun, right? So, yeah. Anyways, I forgot to plug that. Sometimes I'm not that self-serving in regards to my own things outside of the context of the podcast. But, yeah. So, anyways, here's Mike Herrera. I'll talk to you after I mean, you're a few years older than me, and I mean, technically, like when you're 3 to 4 years older than a person, it's like different generations in the music world, as it were. But
yeah, for sure.
Being from Southern California, it was like Solid State and Tooth and Nail were huge. It was just one of those things where it's like, as I started to discover music, it was like, oh yeah, like there's this whole thing that is a real inspiring label where it's like, oh wow, they put out pop punk and they can also put out crazy hardcore. Like, that's cool. But you guys, like MXPX in general, was just like the epitome of a band that was just like, oh dude, if there's a success story tied to Tooth and Nail, like MXPX is it. Like, it just always seemed like you guys were already completely on the rise and being more than just like a Slick Shoes or Goaty Hook or any one of those bands. Did it feel like at a certain point that you had ever, I guess, like completely grown past that to where you look back at the Tooth and Nail years as being like, man, that seems like so long ago. Like I'm just curious about the perspective on that.
Well, it does seem like long ago. It really does. But it's interesting, the success story and thinking back to our arc or our path. And it was very, very much like kind of like one of those fairy tale things where, you meet some guy that's like a producer, that's Aaron Sprinkle. He introduces you to a record label head, that's Brandon Ebel, and they're super nice. They want to make you big stars. They give you no guarantees, but it just seems like everything's going your way, right? So, I mean, that's kind of like what seemed to happen to us. At the same time, I mean, we were working hard from day one. I mean, we were never not. We practiced every day before our first show, July 6th, 1992. Practiced every day for a week before that, and I lost my voice for our first show because I was trying so hard to get the band ready, and I just didn't realize, oh, you've never sang this much in your life,
Right.
So it was like, oh yeah, there's like these mechanical things, that are part of life that if your craft is going to be singing and playing, you have to like pay attention to. I mean, there's this constantly back to the success story of it. We were just always working, and everything happened seemingly fast, mm-hmm. but it's because I'm looking back on it, and everything's kind of a blur. Everything happened, I think, in the time it should have. Back in the day, getting signed. We were still pretty new. We had like probably 20 to 30 songs in our lifetime, which nowadays is probably, I mean, I don't know if that's a lot or a little for bands today, but we had 2 tapes worth, like I would just say like cassette album demos is what we kind of put together back in the day, and we had that ready to go, 2 different ones. But it was a trip, man, like getting to meet this record label guy that comes over. He's from California, which is really cool, right? And he worked as a DJ for a college station, which we thought was cool too. It was just like, it was our own little mini sort of like getting doused in the lights of show business.
Right. Well, and I'm sure. I mean,
yeah.
I'm sure too. It's one of those things where, the options were probably limited for you guys to choose from. Like, I mean, were you out there like, trying to get other labels like to pay attention to you guys, or was it one of those things like this literally was kind of the first opportunity that presented itself?
Well, great question. It was the first opportunity that presented itself. And I think the reason why we didn't try was because Tom Wisniewski was not our original guitar player, but he's our guitar player now. And he was in bands playing drums. And they would submit, like every band he was in submitted to like Epitaph and Fat Records and Lookout Records. And he would get he got a rejection letter from Fat Records for his band, Evolution of Man. So like the logo on their tape was like basically, monkeys growing up into them as a band or something like that.
Right.
Anyway, so, I read this rejection letter, and it was a form letter. It was just like, thanks for sending in your demo, blah, 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 blah. And then there would be like, 1, you suck. 2, you're pretty good, but you're not ready.
Yeah.
And 3, you're amazing, we're signing you. So like they would just like circle 1, and then that's your answer.
Yep, totally.
And so like after reading Tom's band's rejection letters, I wasn't really too I wasn't rushing into like sending my demos out to labels, but I kind of think that would have happened. It's just that 2 years into the band, when we had no album out, people didn't really do albums by themselves anyway back then. We weren't really thinking about getting signed.
Right.
We were honestly thinking about doing better shows and just growing our audience.
Right.
But that presented itself, and it started out as a 7-inch. He was like, let's do a 7-inch. I'll put it out on vinyl. We're like, what's a 7-inch? I'm kidding. I knew what a 7-inch was, but
right.
But that's the thing, is like a lot of kids didn't back then. And but being in the punk scene, I grew up listening to, I wouldn't say grew up. I started listening to punk rock in junior high. Descendants, Black Flag, Henry Rollins, even NoFX, Rancid. Got into them a couple of years before MXPX started. And then it all went crazy from there. But it started out as a 7-inch, and then as soon as he heard the 4 songs, he's like, let's just do an album. It should have been a red flag to like negotiate a better contract at that point.
Well, dude, but I mean, you're at that point, you're children, you're, whatever, 15, 16, 17 years old. It's like, all you get excited about is the fact that someone else cares deeply enough about your band to like pay a couple $1,000s to record. You're like, what are you talking about? I don't have to pay this myself? That's insane.
Yeah, right. And and our first studio recording was done by Aaron Sprinkle for that 4-song 7-inch. Or I think we actually did 5 songs, 4 made it. But the thing is like we were just blown away by the process, by how good everything sounded compared to our garage demos. So little did we know, like we got Poking at You Back and we thought it sounded amazing. A couple years later, we kind of realized, okay, it's not so good.
Yeah, totally. After paying attention to other records, you're like, oh, wait a minute, that was just okay.
Yeah. That's a stretch. Okay is a stretch, but
right.
We learned a lot, and we were learning as we went, and we didn't have the internet, we didn't have YouTube. I mean, that's no excuse, but we literally had to learn from other people, and if those people weren't around, like a lot of times they weren't because we were in Bremerton, Washington, we would just kind of figure it out on our own. So
yeah.
Once we started touring, though, we picked up a lot of great tips from the touring bands, whether it was Warped Tour. We started in 97 with Warped Tour, but we've toured with No Doubt. In 97, we toured with Face to Face, Dancehall Crashers, Real Big Fish, some of the bands are still around, and that sort of taught us, okay, let's start paying attention to what they're doing, how they set up, their stage, how their crew is setting up, and that was an eye opener. But then you go back to the studio, and you're not in the studio with other bands most of the time,
right?
So then it becomes, okay, whoever's producing the record is going to be who you've learned from, and if you'll notice on Life in General, that was produced by Steve Kravac, and I would say he taught us really how to play our instruments.
Right.
Like, the real way. It's like, okay, you can learn how to golf by yourself. You can learn how to box by yourself. But when you get a trainer, you're going to have to relearn everything. That was us doing Life in General.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because you have an adult in the room being like, hey, guys, like, you can do that a little better. You're like, oh, yeah, you're right. We can. Thank you.
Yes, the technology is here.
Right.
Like, I mean, we didn't realize, okay, on Poking At Ya, on Teenage Politics, it was pretty much a one take unless I completely, like, dropped the verse or something on the vocal. If I got through it, that was it. All right, we're good. So it was an eye-opener for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something I always find interesting, too, where it's like, when people like yourself have obviously played in a band over a long period of time. Like, was MXPX ostensibly your first band, or did you have other things that you did prior to that?
MXPX was my very first band.
Which is, it's so funny. Like, because it's like, usually people have that experience of, playing in a terrible band first, but like, you got to play in, arguably, like, a terrible band from the inception of MXPX, and then obviously grew up and got better over time. Like, you had to do that all in public.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that we obviously admit to. We learned to play our instruments by touring, by doing, records with producers. And that's how I also learned how to produce records and how I learned how to record and engineer. It's because now I have a studio up here. So it's like, geez, like everything, we really do learn by watching, and we learn by doing. And if that's not something for me to look back on and go, okay, what am I doing in my life now that I've been successful at? How did I get here? And it's all been from watching and doing. It has not ever been from schooling. Not to say schooling's not something you need, because I'm sure I learned, I remember little bits of history from school, and I learned how to, like, dot my sentences and all that. But yeah, it's interesting, and it's more so now that we have the internet, because you can find somebody that you're really into their work, and which is what all musicians and all artists do, is we get inspired. We get inspired by other artists. We get inspired by the things we see, whether or not they piss us off. That's a whole nother kind of inspiration. But we just watch, and we try to do our best impression, but then it comes out colored by, our own abilities or disabilities, whatever it is. And then when people hear that, maybe it's colored just enough to where they didn't like that other thing, but they really like this. And you just have to find your audience, but you're always inspired by something, inspired by other artists. And MXPX is definitely no different. The Ramones, like I was saying, Black Flag, Descendants, NoFX, but we don't sound anything like those bands, really, if you know punk rock.
Right. Yeah, I find it, I mean, the reason that I, asked the question, like, it being your first band, is because, yeah, like I said, there's this, usually people have one or two terrible, like, punk or hardcore bands, and it's like, oh, yeah, we were just trying to rip off, band A or B, and then, that's usually left in the background as, maybe something that's more serious starts to happen, where you, like, serious, I use that in air quotes, like, actually touring and, putting out records and stuff. But I always, like, same discussion I have with, like, Davey from AFI. It's like, they are a prime example of a band that's evolved over time and sounds like nothing like what they used to, and they had to do their musical experimentation in the public eye, in front of everybody, being like, hey, this is what we're doing now. Can you follow it?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, clearly you're focusing on yourself now. You were born and raised in Bremerton. You had 3 siblings. What, like, just you're the impression that I get of you, just, watching you play and, whatever, existing in the same rooms for many years, is like, you've always seemed like a real, I guess, easygoing guy, in the sense of, you would strike me as definitely being a California dude, as far as, like, pretty chill, easygoing. Is that kind of how you always were, or am I completely off base?
No, I think you're right. I think I'm pretty chill, and especially in a peer-to-peer situation, I'm pretty chill. I'm not I'm not usually taking over the conversation or always having to tell a story. I definitely feel like I put that on a little more when I'm on stage. Of course, trying to perform and do a show that people should be entertained by. So I guess that's the difference there. But I feel I've always felt this inner struggle of two parts of me. The guy that wants to freak out and be super aggressive and get everything I want. But that's, I think, a smaller part of me. And then the bigger part of me is the chill guy that you see most of the time. And a lot of people, especially in the industry, they see me as a guy that they can get a yes out of very easily, because I'm always down to like try new things. I'm always down to like help people out. And a lot of times I feel like I've made the wrong decision because of that. Like, oh man, I shouldn't have said yes to that or this or that. But ultimately, that's my personality, is to be really easygoing and to try to like please everyone in a way. I know that's never a good thing, right? But
sure. And like, where did you stack up in regards to your siblings? Are you the oldest, youngest, middle?
I'm the middle.
Okay.
So I'm the only boy in the middle. Older sister was into. She's a little bit more of the like. If any one of us is a hippie, she's probably a hippie. She lives in Walla Walla, Washington, wine country. So she's done well, but she's when we were growing up, she was into new wave and punk, a little bit of punk, but just because it spilled into punk from like New Order and all those types of like kind of new wave bands and stuff. But also my cousin kind of got me into punk rock. But my younger sister, she was always just a younger sister to me, like 5 years apart. We didn't really hang out. She was just there to annoy me. and I'm sure she hated me for years and years because I was always taking up all the capital, the time and the energy from my parents because of the band was or still taking up a ton of time. My parents are always involved when I ask them to be in things. So yeah, it's got to be hard on a sibling. Luckily for my older sister, she was already kind of done and out of the house pretty early. So
right.
She doesn't hate me.
Well, I mean, to your point, I mean, the middle child is usually the person who's maybe trying to, bridge the gap between, maybe the oldest and the youngest from fighting with one another and that sort of stuff. So maybe that's where your sort of people-pleasing attitude comes from.
Yeah, very true. Maybe.
Yeah.
I haven't psychoanalyzed myself in a while, so
yeah.
It's like as I grow older, I definitely. I'm trying to chill out more, and I'm trying to be less opinionated and less sure of myself. and I don't mean confidence. I mean, like, you just never know what's true and what's not, and I'm not trying to make a play on like fake news or anything. It's just aside from that, I just feel like, okay, when I was younger, I wrote a lot of songs that were very, very sure of whatever opinion I was talking about. And now I don't necessarily believe that. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe I should not be so adamant about things that are like, okay, this is a table. Sure, I'm not going to argue that. But metaphysical things, existential things, that sort of thing. The bigger questions in life. I guess I'm a little less sure of myself. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing for me.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Trust me in saying that therapy is an incredible tool for as you are traveling through life, because who you are as a person, 5 or 10 years ago is maybe a completely different version of yourself, because we run into challenges, whether it's work, whether it's life stuff, relationships, all of those things you can work through with a therapist. And that is why I love BetterHelp and what they do. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and is designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, and then you get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Ray to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/Ray. Dip in, give therapy a try, and become a better person.
Leftovers. Or the DMV.
Number 97.
Or house cleaning. Or
Chumba Casino always brings the fun. Play over 100 different games online for free from anywhere. You could redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. Live the Chumba life. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hey, everybody, I'm Amber Ruffin.
And I'm her beautiful sister, Lacey Lamar.
Fun fact about Lacey, she's not as beautiful as I am. You guys, we have a brand new podcast on Will Ferrell's Big Money Players Network called The Amber and Lacey and Amber Show.
We are New York Times bestselling authors, and we've written 2 books on everyday racism that made you gasp and laugh at the same time.
We done did it. We sold a bunch of books. We were on Late Night with Seth Meyers and The Amber Ruffin Show. And now we only have one frontier to conquer. That's podcasts.
Podcast, baby.
This quiz show is going to be fun. We're going to have celebrities. We're going to quiz them about things that they are experts at. And we'll see who wins and who loses.
You gotta watch us. Ooh, no, you have to listen to us. I mean, you can still watch us, but you gotta listen.
But if you're watching us, you have to tell us. You can't just be watching us.
Listen to the Amber and Lacey and Amber Show on Will Ferrell's Big Money Players Network, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, pardon the interruption, but I have to tell you about this awesome thing called HelloFresh. So, you've probably heard of the concept of food being delivered to you, and you prepare said thing for you and your significant other, and then you eat it, and you're like, wow, that's really good. This is far and above the best service that I have personally consumed, and it's unbelievable because what they do is they create new delicious recipes with step-by-step instructions with pictures designed to take around 30 minutes or less, so that everyone from myself, who is a complete cooking novice, to pro cooks like my wife will be able to make and give to you, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And what's even cooler is the fact that they give you stuff that isn't part of most people's kind of normal cuisine. Like they may give you tacos, but then they would have like a cool spicy tofu thing, or they twist it about to get you to sample different things, which is so exciting because, you might find your new favorite vegetable. You might find your new favorite dish in general. And they challenge you in the best way possible. And they source the freshest ingredients measured to the exact quantities needed. So basically there's no food waste. It's amazing. You can hear my dogs whining in the background because they absolutely love this food. No, I'm just kidding. But regardless, HelloFresh is the real deal. And what I want to give you, this thing's less than $10 a meal, but I'm also going to give you money off as well. So you can go to HelloFresh.com and use the unique promo code WORDS30 for $30 off your first week of HelloFresh. So go to HelloFresh.com, enter WORDS30, and then you get your shipment, but you get $30 off that. That's basically me giving you probably 2 to 3 free meals. It's unbelievable. So I love HelloFresh, and you should as well. And if you've been hearing other people talking about this thing, dive in, try it out, because they have so many varieties of foods. They have, vegan, vegetarian stuff. They got, obviously your omnivore meat eater stuff. So they got everything for any palate whatsoever. HelloFresh.com. Use the promo code WORDS30, and you will enjoy some food. $30 off. Boom. All right. Now back to the show. This is something I was going to bring up later, and I find so... I don't know if I call it interesting or funny or whatever. I just find it so, no matter what, people are always going to ask you about your spirituality. People are just going to be like, so Mike, you're Christian, right? Or no, you're not right now. And it's like, I find it, that those conversations so, reductive in many ways, just because it's like, dude, what I was, back then, where I am now, those could be 2 completely different things. But I like what you're expressing as far as like, the older you get, the more kind of, introspective you get. You start to think about, not only your own mortality, but then you just start to think of like, oh yeah, what is it that I actually do believe? Because maybe this certain area of my life I've never even spent time with, just beyond like the basic 5 minutes of thought you've put into something,
Yeah, it's true. And it's interesting because do people really sit down and think these days? I would say most people don't. Unless they've already kind of trained themselves to do that. And I don't even mean meditation, that's a whole nother thing, but like presenting yourself, okay, I have a problem, let's solve it. How do you do that? You sit down in one spot and like don't look at your phone, just think or take a walk or whatever. So like for me, I don't do that as much as I want to, but I definitely realize that helps, and when I'm talking, I think about like new songs. I think about new albums. I think about what should I really do? Like what should I go back and forth from the idea of should I just write a record and not worry about planning it out, just write whatever comes out, or should I really, really kind of pre-plan a song like this, a song like this. So these things have to be decided upon or else nothing ever gets done, right? And what you're kind of saying is on a deeper level, when you're spiritual or not spiritual, or you should know why and you should know what you believe. But it's so hard in this society, I guess probably just because we're being inundated with ads constantly and new posts and new Twitter feeds and Instagram and all that, but really nothing gets done. Nothing truly that matters gets done. Sure, you can send out another post and let people know about the show and the podcast is up and this and that, but like really getting something done for yourself doesn't happen unless you sit down and decide and make choices and present yourself with the problems that you have and what you're going to do. It's rough, right? It's like,
yeah.
Who has time for this? And what is that for you? I don't know. Like for me, I've come to the conclusion, that religion wasn't helping my life. Not in the same way that it does a lot of people. Maybe it's helping my life with the band, because a lot of people that are religious or that consider themselves Christians really are into positive lyrics, positive, clean music. They're into MXPX because we started out on Tooth and Nail, or one of a dozen reasons, right? But then we have just as many fans that are just into good music and don't care and don't have any thoughts on God or whether he's real or not. So I'm constantly talking to both types of people, right? And these people are just they're individuals, and they all have little different sort of nuances of why they think the way they think. So as you can imagine, me going through, there are early years known as a quote-unquote Christian punk band, or, we were on Tooth and Nail Records, all that, playing in churches. I grew up going to church. So, it wasn't something that was foreign to me, but I also was the type of guy that listened to all types of music, punk rock. I didn't listen to religious music. I didn't listen to other, like the big, I guess, evangelical or Christian type acts of the day. I didn't listen to that stuff. So all I cared about was getting into shows and getting into the pit, going skateboarding. Like I was just a kid, and then my parents happened to be hippie Christians, like born agains, took me to church, had that going on in my life. But that's not really like where I'm at now. I'm just like a guy that really loves what I do. I understand there's a lot of people that believe with their whole heart that there's a God, and I'm not saying there isn't, but straight up, I just realized not just one day, it was just a long process that wasn't really something that I needed. And if it was something that I needed and I took a break from it, then I would know. And I think the important thing is not to lie to yourself and not to lie to other people just to make money.
Oh yeah, no, that's incredible. I mean, I appreciate you walking me through your train of thought because I do think there is this. I mean, honestly, both you and I, we have many mutual friends, but one of the mutual friends is Roy Culver, which I know you worked with a little bit at Tooth and Nail and stuff like that. And he always related these random stories to me in regards to, and actually one specifically about you guys, not so much like about you as individuals, but like, Tooth and Nail would get battered by people, this is like right at the advent of the internet. So maybe people weren't emailing, but they were like literally mailing letters being like, I think MXPX isn't a Christian band because I saw the lead singer spit on stage. And it was like, I mean, I'm sure you have anecdotal stories of people being like, "Oh yeah, I used to like MXPX, but I saw them like brush up against a female shoulder in the wrong way, and like all of a sudden they're, you're the devil or the Antichrist." And it's like, I can't even imagine living in that world for as long as you did without getting incredibly frustrated by many aspects of it.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It was hugely frustrating. It was. I mean, as kids, we wanted to rebel against things that were injustices to us. That we, of course, in our small suburban bubble, living in a sort of smaller town outside of Seattle, we have a somewhat limited worldview, before the internet was big. But the things that piss you off are what you want to sing about. And when people treat you like shit constantly, when you're on tour, and you're like, okay, those are Christians, and they're treating us like shit. Why? Oh, because we're not doing the exact thing that they want us to do. Well, fuck you. We're not going to do anything you want us to do. See you later. That's our attitude, and that's anybody's attitude, especially when you're a little punk kid and you're trying to get your aggression out by writing aggressive little skate punk songs. You're just giving us material at that point. But so in some ways, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe they like helped us. Never thought of it that way.
No, it's true. I mean, because I do think there's something that's really important that I think many people, don't consider when, especially if it's coming from a philosophical or religious standpoint, where it's like, you see so many people habitually doing something, whether it's going to church, whether it's like, not participating in a certain activity, whatever it is. It's like, your parents raise you a certain way. That's kind of what you do. But the most important moment is when you actually make that decision for yourself. And I think a lot of people, the people that were probably like, oh yeah, Mike Herrera spits on stage, so he's not Christian. Those people like literally have never questioned their own internal beliefs before. And so it's like they have to outwardly project on other people being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this person did this thing. And it's like, have you even what do you actually believe? Like, yeah, you could quote Bible verses or, use facts or whatever it is that you believe. But like, I don't feel like you've even arrived at the point where I think that most people should. Like you mentioned before, you're actually questioning what you believe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guarantee you the internet is, the worst thing that's ever happened to religion and organized religion, I guess. Just because people can finally get out there. Like, why do you think Orthodox Jews aren't allowed to get online? They have an actual separate internet just for Orthodox Jews. I listened to a whole podcast about it. It's fascinating. I think it was Radio Lab or something. And they get excommunicated. It's nuts. I mean, there's a bunch of more hardcore religions, obviously more hardcore than like a Christianity kind of thing, but it's knowledge is power, and knowledge is something that I think our government doesn't want us to have. I think in some ways schools don't even want us to have all the knowledge, right? They just want to teach you this, this, and this. So it's nuts. And I'm, in some ways, I would say I'm like you said, I'm chill. Like, I'm not constantly trying to turn over the powers that be and organize protests. I guess I'm not that outspoken about things, but I do have those sort of anti-establishment streak. I have that streak in me. I have the if you're trying to control me, that's the worst thing that you can do, because I'm just going to in spite walk the other way. People just in general don't like to be controlled, and they don't like to be held down. When you hold your dog down, what happens? Usually your dog will squirm until he's completely broken and will do whatever you say. Like humans don't like that, and I feel like that's just it's in all of us, right? It's in all of us. Yet over and over and over, I feel like the power, whoever's in power, in the power structure, the governments, religions, even big corporations now, obviously, now that they're considered people and can vote with their money, they're just creating a world that's terrible for the individual. I don't know. I'm not trying to paint a doomsday scenario or anything, because life is great, and especially in punk rock and in music, there's a lot of great things happening. But it's always happening, and it always will. So it's just, unfortunately, there's going to be people that will be hurt by that at the forefront of those movements, and people that are resistant at the forefront of those movements are going to be the people that pay really the ultimate price. But it's in all of us. So I think that's a huge reason why religion does not want you to know things. They don't want you to get online. They don't want to read, aside from what their book says, they don't want you to read other things. But it's pretty crazy. Yuri Ruli, the drummer of MXPX, he reads all the time, and he reads all these historical books, and he knows a ton about religion, and he goes to church, but he doesn't practice the actual religion anymore. So he's like me, where he's kind of just, I'm good. But unlike me, he still interacts with the community, like the church community. Yeah. Because he likes the people that he hangs out with there. So it's like, okay, I get that. Right. That makes sense to me. Kind of doesn't make sense in some ways, but but isn't there something kind of freeing about going somewhere where you don't actually believe the hype, and so it's just purely about talking to people and seeing how they tick, and having a place to sort of just, I don't know, pass around ideas. Right. Well, you wouldn't think church would be a place for that, but it could be. No. Well, dude, the right one. I mean, honestly, it could be the same experience that a person has in going to a show. Maybe they don't understand the music, don't like the music, or whatever, but they get the feeling of community that so many people look for outside of the context of because so many people just have normal jobs, they work, and maybe they have a few friends there, and then they go home, and where do people build community? It's like. I can't. I'm sure you're as thankful as I am, where I have this huge community of music people that you and I didn't need to do the whole weird get to know each other. It's like we just oh yeah, we're in the same world. Of course it'll be easy to talk to, But whereas most other normal people probably it's like going up to a person at a bar, that sounds terrifying, just to be like, hey human being, hi. It's like, wow. So I can see where the appeal is from just I like the people that are contained under this building. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I don't know. It's just, life is weird. People are all kind of similar, but yet everybody kind of just really, you're into that? I would never would have guessed. Yeah. Totally. People are surprising. Totally. Similar yet surprising. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. So I threw Yuri under the bus a little bit, but that's all right. He doesn't give a fuck. Yeah, he's resilient. You're fine. Something I always find, or I observe from a distance in regards to bands that have ostensibly just grown so large, because when you guys were killing it as far as hundreds of thousands of records from a commercial success standpoint, when you were kind of in the middle of that, and you were reacting to all these things that were happening to you, and you were involved in the sense of the business decisions and all that sort of stuff, were there ever moments that you felt like it was dude, this is way too not way too big, where it's I can't handle it, but I am not recognizing a lot of these decisions we're making, or these tours we're going on, and not from a regret standpoint, but just dude, this is so big, I don't even know what to do with it? I would say I probably did what most humans do, is when things are too big, you block it out in a lot of ways. If it's just a blur. And that's basically how I feel about most of my past, from like 2010 and beyond. So I remember the last decade, and that's about it. So it's like, as the years go, it's harder and harder to remember. Of course, when I talk to people, or especially with the guys, Yuri, Tom, they remember some of the details much better than I do. And I wonder why that is. I wonder if they just had, I think because I was, the band guy, the band leader, the singer, writing the songs, I was always working. And so I didn't really have as much, or didn't take as much time to really sit down, take it all in, go, okay, am I on the right track here? Am I letting people influence me in ways I shouldn't? Am I good? I mean, I never really did those evaluations that you should do, especially when things are going really well like this. And so it just kind of blurred through. Like, there's always people that I can't remember their names that are important to, this big tour that we did, or this or that. Like, I just didn't take the time to really get to know, like, this promoter or that guy, or that that DJ. Where I try to at least make a note of it these days, and I think that's the big difference. And it all comes down to being a little bit more mature. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to say that's probably why.
Yeah.
But also because, like what you said, maybe it was so big and happening so fast that it was hard to really see it. And another thing about the past is, unless you had a big budget, which we never really did, you don't have a photographer, you don't have a videographer. And even nowadays, even though it's so much easier now, you can just use your cell phone, right? Even nowadays, people don't always have a photo or a video person, but it's way more than you used to see. And bands that are much smaller than we are have that. So a lot of it just has to do with, we didn't document everything like I wish we would have. It wasn't done back then, right?
Yeah.
To the extent that it is now. And so you lose a lot of detail. You lose a lot of the big picture. You can't look back and go, wow, that was a big crowd. I didn't realize it at the time. Well, now I can look at the video from Japan a couple months ago and go, damn, that was a big crowd.
Right.
And it was just a month ago, so it's, that's an interesting little thought process, though, looking into, like, was the moment too big?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of moments are too big. Like, a car wreck is probably, maybe it's the wrong way to describe it as too big, but it's something that's happening and you're shocked by it. And so you lose some or sometimes what happens is everything goes slow motion, but I don't think that can really happen with something like over a decade or more.
Yeah, right.
It'd be kind of awesome, but
right. I just pretty much blurred out 10 years and whatever. I don't know. It kind of happened.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hey, everybody, I'm Amber Ruffin.
And I'm her beautiful sister, Lacey Lamar.
Fun fact about Lacey, she's not as beautiful as I am. You guys, we have a brand new podcast on Will Ferrell's Big Money Players Network called The Amber and Lacey and Amber Show.
We are New York Times bestselling authors, and we've written 2 books on everyday racism that made you gasp and laugh at the same time.
We done did it. Mm-hmm. We sold a bunch of books. We were on Late Night with Seth Meyers and The Amber Ruffin Show. And now we only have one frontier to conquer. That's podcasts.
Podcast, baby.
This quiz show is gonna be fun. We're gonna have celebrities. We're gonna quiz them about things that they are experts at. And we'll see who wins and who loses.
you got to watch us. Ooh, no, you have to listen to us. I mean, you can still watch us, but you got to listen.
But like, if you're watching us, you have to tell us. You can't just be watching us.
Listen to the Amber and Lacey and Amber Show on Will Ferrell's Big Money Players Network, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Longtime listeners of this program will probably recognize this good buddy of mine, Smile Direct Club. So what it is, it's basically saying, you know, your teeth, like, they can get straighter. They can look better. And you don't have to pay a fortune for it. So they work directly with state-certified dentists and orthodontists to ship custom invisible aligners right to your door each month. So you don't have to go into the office, you don't have to have embarrassing wires, or frankly, wasting money. So you can get started with an impression kit, which is done in the privacy of your own home, at your own schedule for $95, and it's covered by the Smile Guarantee, so if your aligners are not a good fit, you get your money back. And not to mention, the treatment is extremely affordable. The aligner treatment is 60% less than other brands or braces, and you could save even more with insurance or a flexible spending account. Many dental insurance plans reimburse customers for a portion of the costs of invisible aligners, and Smile Direct Club accepts many FSAs, flexible spending accounts. I'm such a pro at this. Anyways, listeners of this show can save 50% off the evaluation costs. So please go to SmileDirectClub.com and use the promo code WORDS at checkout. That's SmileDirectClub.com, promo code WORDS. And let me tell you, I've gone through this process. It's easy, it's painless. Their customer service is bar none, and it's great because you pop them in at night, you wake up, you take them out, and that's it. That's all you need to worry about. And I have absolutely noticed a shift in my teeth, and I'm like, oh, hey, like that looks really good. And frankly, this is something that I wouldn't have ever sought out to myself, but now that I'm using it, I'm like, oh, wow, this is for everybody. Because if you get a person like me to do this, and I was maybe a little resistant to the idea, for people who are even slightly curious about it, you will love this service. Smile Direct Club's the real deal. So SmileDirectClub.com, promo code WORDS, and you'll save 50% off the cost of the at-home impression kit. So there you go. And enjoy a smile that will blind everybody. Well, maybe not blind, but, you know, just be straighter, right? That's what we're all looking for. So SmileDirectClub.com, WORDS, promo code. Now back to the episode. As you started to, tour and get used to that aspect of your life, did you, immediately like touring, or was that something that you kind of learned how to become comfortable with?
That's a good question, because I guess I immediately liked touring. I guess I didn't really think or not whether it didn't seem like a choice to me, or it didn't seem like this should be something I should complain about. So I guess I didn't even think about it, to be honest, Ray. All I was thinking about was these shows, and of course, when we're breaking down at the side of the road, overheating every 15 minutes in the Rocky Mountains on our very first tour, mind you. Of course, we were thinking about touring, but we were just thinking about the van. So like everything presented itself in a way that was so urgent to us at the time that we did not have any time to really think about it. We just had to fix the problem. And there was always a problem.
Right.
Whether it was a hole in our radiator, our temperature gauge busting, whatever, right? Tires, everything's happened. Our engine's gone, blown up. We were on tour with Rancid. Our engine blew up. We showed up like the show was already started. We didn't miss our set, though. But we had to literally buy a brand new van on tour.
Which is the worst.
Yeah, it is the worst, because you never get what you want for the right price. So anyway, it's just like, now that I think about it, we were doing, and I don't want to say it was as dangerous or as gnarly, but it's kind of like being out on a combat mission where problems will present themselves. Your training hopefully will get you through that, but we don't have any training because we're kids, and so it's just all about humans being intuitive and joining together as a team and just getting whatever it is done. Tumbledown, my other band, Tumbledown. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't know about them, but we did like touring from 2007 to 2012 or something like that.
Yep.
And we were in Mexico. Everything else had already gone wrong. Window busted, passport stolen, bunch of money stolen, gear, whatever. So we're at 2 a.m. It's like 2 or 3 a.m. in about 2 hours south of the border. The Tucson. What's that? I don't know what the Mexican city is. Juarez, Mexico, I think it is, or something like that. But I think I'm wrong, actually. I think Juarez is in
Texas. Yeah.
Yeah, so whatever the Arizona version of that is, we're down, going over this. I'm driving, everybody's sleeping. We're on our way to Culiacan. We have another full night. We're going to drive all night and all day and get there that evening and do the show that night. So, I mean, we have a long drive ahead. All of a sudden, the semi passes us, and kind of just, when something really heavy goes by and the wind pushes your car, well, it pushed the van. We had a van, no trailer, and it popped our tire, and it popped the back driver's side, and we were on a 2-lane highway, so there was a passing lane and a regular right lane, and then literally no lip, like it just dropped down into a ravine. Like not like a death ravine, but a ravine to where like you can't pull over and park anywhere. So we parked on the road, and we all like literally like a NASCAR pit team. I woke everybody up. Everybody else was sleeping. I'm like, guys, flat tire. We got to change this thing quick. We can't pull over. So we had our Mexican tour manager, Bernie, flagging all the cars and big rig trucks so that they would get over. And then just in case, every time a car would come, we would get off the road and all stand just in case the van got plowed. And so here we are, like this pit crew. We got 2 guys on the tire doing the jack and doing the whatever, undoing the tire, deadbolts, and then the Bernie with a pillow and then a white pillow and waving it with a flashlight. And then I was like filming and like helping out with whatever they needed. So like basically we got that tire changed in 10 minutes, I would say, probably 10 minutes with this, having to take breaks when cars came by. So that was like the only thing that really broke me, like that's the only time I've had to like, all right, guys, like our bass player said, I think it's time for us to turn around and go home. And that's what I'm going to do no matter what. So I hope you guys decide to do that too. I'm like, all right, well, I don't want to split everybody up, so let's just go home. So we turned around and we went back to the U.S. But that was like, it was a defeat. It was a failure in a lot of ways because I've never had to do that. But there's always something, and there's always, you hear stories about, our tour manager, Bernie, from that tour was like, yeah, I was on a tour once, and there was a giant boulder in the middle of the road, so we had to stop. And when we stopped, road bandits came out and stole all our shit, all our cell phones, passports, everything. That was touring in Mexico. And so, like, we're touring in Mexico dealing with already passports, having machine guns pointed at us, sitting and waiting in the embassy for hours without, we couldn't take our cell phones in with us. So I'm like sitting here writing. I think the worst thing I lost, sorry, I've gone on a terrible tangent, but the worst thing I lost was my journal. I had a songbook in there. I had a full journal and a full songbook with tons of songs that were yet to be recorded. So that's like the only thing I really regret about any of that is just losing some of those songs. So I'm like sitting in Tijuana, Mexico. This is before the tire incident, by the way. This is when we got our passports stolen. We had to get replacement passports. So Harley and I, our drummer, sitting there waiting, and it's like that realization that you're addicted to your cell phone because there's nothing to do. Nothing. You're sitting, no cell phone, no nothing. Everybody else speaks Spanish, so you can't even like listen in on conversations.
Right.
So I just picked up a piece of paper and I started like trying to remember lyrics from my songbook, and I wrote out a bunch of lyrics from one of the songs I really was devastated about. And I know it's probably different, but I'm still pretty happy with what I remembered, and that'll eventually come out as a song, I'm sure. But yeah, it's just like all these things mushed together, the failures. And going back to your original question about touring, humans learn pretty easily. You know, we were talking a little bit before about how we adapt pretty easily to a big cell phone versus a little cell phone.
Right.
Where at first it's giant, and then you go back to your little cell phone, you're like, this thing's tiny. What? It's the same thing with touring. I think, you know, you get used to touring in a van, you can do it, you just keep doing it. You get used to touring in a bus, you don't want to go back to that van, you know, you're accustomed to first class, you know, you're riding business class. So, I mean, I've done all ways of touring, and for me, it's all about, it's about a balance of, if you don't have any money, you can pretty much expect to be in a van and to be slumming it. But that's not a bad thing either. I've done plenty of great van tours, and sometimes those are the best tours because you see everything. If you're in the U.S., if you're in Europe, if you're in South America, whatever it is, you don't see anything if you're on a bus. You're just on the bus watching TV, on the bus on your computer, on your phone, whatever it is. If you're in a van, if you're driving, you know, you're forced to take stops, take rest stops, go to the gas station, go to the cool food spots that are famous. I mean, I always look up cool food spots on the way. I mean, when I started touring, and this is the old man thing, you know, we didn't have shoes even, you know.
Yeah,
no cell phone.
You walked uphill both ways, right.
Exactly. It was always snowing. But, you know, no cell phone, okay, here's something to think about. We always talk about how we couldn't Skype and we couldn't FaceTime our loved ones and our girlfriends back home and our family members. But that's not even half of it. You couldn't just look up a map. You couldn't look, where's the next gas station? We've run out of gas a couple times, and we actually bought gas for $32 a gallon out in the desert one time because we were that desperate. So, I mean, that is a huge thing, you know, just the fact that you have a resource that you can tap anytime if you've got cell signal. Boom. We didn't have that. So we did things the way we knew, you know, the only way we knew how, which was making phone calls and keeping a few quarters up in the dashboard in the ashtray.
Yep. Yeah. No. Totally. No, I appreciate all those trains of thought and tangents, just because it is one of those things where, you know, touring is such a massive beast, and anybody that hasn't participated in it on any level is, you know, it's kind of a foreign idea. It's like, it seems so disconnected, and most people, you know, clearly, like you were mentioning, that, you know, it's like, oh yeah, you roll around in a bus, it's super glamorous, and it's like, well, there's varying degrees of that, and it's like, you just have to, you got to put it in perspective, and yeah, I appreciate you doing that. Two last things I want to hit on before I let you go was, you know, one, the idea, like, once the band life and touring starts to, you know, die down, you know, I know a lot of people have trouble sort of transitioning into, you know, like, what is the identity of myself if, you know, this band doesn't exist, or the fact that, you know, I'm in front of people's faces all the time, you know, all that sort of stuff starts to, you know, jigger around in your head. No matter how large of a presence you may have in the music scene, people start to be like, oh yeah, if I'm not touring, like, you know, what if I am not this, you know, if I'm insert name of band after your name, you know, if I'm not, like, you know, if I'm not Mike from MXPX, like, who am I? Did you have any kind of, you know, I guess problems as you started to, you know, even entering Tumbledown, where it's like, you know, you were doing a different style of music there. So, you know, was that stuff that you struggled with in any capacity, or did you kind of, you know, be able to manage it?
That's a good question. You know, that it's hard to say because I'm sure I have an ego in some ways, but I really like going back to the chill thing. I'm pretty chill when it comes to just talking to people, and I've really told myself over and over, I'm no better than you, I'm no better than you. And so when it comes to doing new music projects, I never expect. It's all about just trying something new. And yes, it can be a bummer if, like, nobody shows up to your shows, but I guess if I did expect anything, I expected Tumbledown to start small, and it did. And, as people caught on, it got bigger and bigger. And, of course, it never was as big as MXPX. But I also wasn't doing the same things that I do with MXPX. But more to the actual psychology of it, I guess, I've been talking to my base, I guess you could say base, we can get political, and I've never stopped. So even though MXPX has changed the way we tour, we're still out there all the time, and we're still, we're not out necessarily in all the same circles as we used to be touring full time. But if you pay attention to MXPX, if you're a fan of MXPX, you can't get away from us unless you want to,
Right.
So I guess that in that way, I haven't really experienced that, because I still get people constantly coming up to me in airports and I haven't been in a mall lately, but malls and restaurants. Anytime, like, I heard we have a celebrity here or whatever. It's just like, what? Like,
Yeah.
People are weird, right? People are weird.
Right.
So I get that sort of little ego boost. I would say plenty in life, being just like a little tiny sliver of, I guess, what you'd say a public person.
Mm-hmm.
But when I do things non-punk rock and people don't know who I am, that's actually a cool thing. I think I don't want to be treated differently, or I just want to be treated, I guess, as respectfully as anybody else, right?
Yeah.
Like, of course, like when I'm on planes, and back in the day, I got a lot of people talking behind my back about tattoos, or maybe it was even flattering, like, oh my God, look at those guys' tattoos. Like, because Yuri would always be behind us, and they wouldn't ever think he was with us. And so they would start talking.
Totally. Hey, look, who's this nerd with all these tattoo guys?
Yeah, so they would just assume that's a different guy. And so they would start talking about us, or me, or whatever, and me or Tom usually. And then Yuri would be like, yeah, those guys were talking about your tattoos when you guys walked by. So, like, yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of it is in my head. I know that people treat me differently, that I work with sometimes, and it takes a really special person to, like, be the right person for me to work with, so that I can be my silly self and they don't take it as, don't do your work. Because it's strange, because, like, either people take me like I'm a real big jerk and I'm a really hard boss, or I guess what I'm talking about is, like, with MXPX, the crew, and then with me doing studio stuff here as well. But I like to be really easygoing with people I work with. But at the same time, I expect work to be done. So it's like it throws them off. So it's like, but I thought we were cool. We are cool, but just get your stuff done. Right. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's I think I'm too easygoing, and I like to always engage positively with people, unless they give me a reason not to. So for that reason, I'm not going to be the ego guy. If I go up and play, if I go up in I don't know. I think there's never a time where you should expect to have an audience that loves you. Even MXPX shows, of course they love us, but I'm going in there with the attitude that I have to perform. I have to give them what they absolutely want and absolutely need. And this is going to hold them over till next time. And if I don't do that, there may not be a next time. So that's my attitude about everything. And so therefore, I don't get hurt when people don't know about me, or when I don't feel like I'm the center of attention. But I don't know. If anything, I've been taught that failure is a good thing. Failure can be a great thing, and we can learn from those failures.
Yeah.
Learn from, there's a big one that happened last year in our organization. Not a public one, but just something that happened with one of our people, and we're just like, okay, how do we not make that happen again? How do we, the next person that comes along, let's make sure that it's solved, right? This problem, or this problem that didn't have to be a problem in the first place if we would have communicated even better, right? Stuff
totally.
like that.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. And the last thing I want to touch on was, clearly since you and I exist in the same exact space, not from only a musical perspective, but then the fact that, we both, are nerd podcast people. I'm guessing that the same sort of enjoyment that I get out of, speaking to people like yourself is, the reason why you still like to do it from a podcasting perspective. Because, there is that weird isolation of, because you and I are talking, and then I'm going to put this out as an episode, and then, I'll hear from people being like, oh, that was a cool episode, or, maybe you sucked, maybe you talked too much, or whatever, you get feedback from people. But, podcasting in and of itself is kind of an isolating experience. So, I don't know what sort of itches that it scratches for you in order to, keep on keeping on.
Yeah, that's great. I've been doing my Herrera hour, I don't know, 3 years now, probably, if I had to roughly guess. And for me, I was inspired by other podcasts, like I was talking about earlier. And I wanted to figure out a way to do something weekly as I realized, okay, MXPX is slowing down the amount that we're putting out music. I don't think that that's a bad thing, but I do want to still be out there, right? So for me, a podcast was solving a couple things. It was being able to create something new every week without actually having to write some crappy song. I feel like if I wrote a song every week, there's going to be some duds, right? So, and just the fact that a podcast was what I was getting into, was what I was doing with my spare time. I was using that as a tool to learn. So it's like, okay, I want to learn about this. Do they have a podcast about it yet? If not, then I'll do the traditional route. I'll go to YouTube. But if they have a podcast, then I can actually do something else while learning. I love cleaning. I don't love cleaning, but I love cleaning or organizing while I listen to a podcast, whatever you're doing, right? So those were my first motivations. I was really into political stuff. I was into talking about politics. Once Trump sort of started coming around, I actually was already off politics, and I just haven't really gone back there with the podcast. But I really started out talking a lot more personal issues, a lot more politics, and then just as the podcast morphed into, what do you guys like? What do you guys like? It just seemed like they kept telling me music. We like it when you have musicians on. Exactly like what I'm doing with your podcast. They like to hear about how people get things done, how they did this, what happened with this situation, what are your plans? That's what they want to know because they're into music. So as I sort of have done it, over the years, it's morphed into more of a, how did you do this podcast? Which I like as well, which I like probably better than just talking about politics and because that got a little I don't know, a little much for me after a while. And to be honest, I'm just not the best at it, right? You need somebody that's going to do a little more homework, and let's be honest, that's not me.
Sure.
But yeah, my Herrera hour every Friday. I guess I should plug it. Every Friday on Adobe Radio, it airs at 8 p.m. East Coast, and that's 5 p.m. here on the West Coast, and it becomes a podcast. And so I just had on, by the time this airs, I just had on Mark McMillan from Hawthorne Heights. He came by, and we did it on the very last day of Warped Tour in Pomona.
Nice.
So that was cool. So yeah, those guys have an interesting story because they're doing everything DIY, and they all kind of have their own job that they do that helps the band out. So they're much more proactive than I realized. But yeah, I love the podcast, and it's hard. It's hard to keep up with it, but having that sort of deadline that every week has to be out is the best thing for me, because otherwise I would not be doing it still. There's just no way. Left to my own devices, I would start something else. So
right.
That's another great thing about the podcast. It's forcing me to be prolific and to keep going.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. It definitely, it inspires you where it's just like, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing every week and it feels good. So, well, dude, thank you so much for hanging, man. I really appreciate the weird places we went, but that's exactly what a podcast is for, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm constantly trying to, very, very incrementally, and not huge steps, but I'm constantly trying to tweak things. And that's one of the things that I'm always wondering, like, is this a good thing or a bad thing? And it always comes down to me, the guest, and how good they are. I mean, because who cares what the topic is as long as you're listening to like Jamie Foxx or somebody like that, you know, people that are true entertainers that can tell a story or whatever. And I feel like I'm constantly trying to get better at that. Like I'm never quite there. I'm always subpar, but yeah, that's why we keep doing it. We'll get better.
Exactly. Yeah. Eventually, like 15 years into this, we might be just like suitable, mediocre at this.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
No, you're doing well. I'm talking about me.
Oh, well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Boom. There was Mr. Mike Herrera hanging out on the show, and thank you very much, Mike. And I also met his co-conspirator on the podcast and all things MXPX, Tom. And even though he didn't set this interview up, I got to know him after the fact. And nice to meet you, Tom. And thanks for all the help promoting this episode. So that's that. Like I said, next week is a cool episode where I do with my good friend Joey Cahill, who is the proprietor of 613 on Records. We go deep on 2000s hardcore, which it was a very interesting time. And like we didn't decide to focus on like the 2000s metalcore that started to explode around there. We decided to focus on, you know, kind of your more traditional, quote unquote old school hardcore, but these bands were kind of putting a more modern flourish on it, where it wasn't, as I guess basic as some of the bands were in the late 80s, early 90s. So we felt pretty good about that, and the episode was awesome. So that's why I decided to release it as its full-fledged-ness and not edit the bad boy down and just let it roll. So that's what's happening next week, and just be safe, everybody, right? That's what I tell you at the end of every episode, and I truly do mean it. So until next week, please be safe, everybody.
You've been listening to the Jabberjaw Podcast Network, jabberjawmedia.com. Shh.
Leftovers. Or the DMV.
Number 97.
Or house cleaning. Or
Chumba Casino always brings the fun. Play over 100 different games online for free from anywhere. You could redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. Live the Chumba life. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
I'm Amber Ruffin.
And I'm her gorgeous sister, Lacey Lamar.
Okay, fun fact, Lacey is not that gorgeous.
Amber, get on with it.
Okay, everybody, we have exciting news to share. We're teaming up with Will Ferrell's Big Money Players Network to bring you our brand new podcast called The Amber and Lacey and Amber Show.
We did it. We sold a bunch of books, we conquered late night, and now we'll play fun quizzes and games with friends and take you along for the ride. Listen to The Amber and Lacey and Amber Show on Will Ferrell's Big Money Players Network, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.